Even though we've been on over 90 cruises, our first river cruise on AmaWaterways was not what we expected. And we're back, and we share all the details with you, from what we loved, what we hated, and what we wish we knew before our trip. We cover it all to help you decide if an AmaWaterways river cruise is really right for your next vacation. Up next. Welcome aboard, cruisers. I'm Don B from Eat, Sleep, Cruise. And while we did our first river cruise with Viking last year, from the moment we stepped on board AmaWaterways, AmaMagna, everything felt different. In fact, few ships can measure up to AmaWaterways' AmaMagna. This double-wide 196-passenger vessel stands out in the crowd. Twice the width of a typical river cruise vessel, the extra space offers guests more area to relax and experience the variety of onboard amenities. Featuring a modern design with warm tones and open spaces that were inviting yet still intimate. In fact, given the availability of amenities, AmaMagna almost felt more like a small ocean ship than a river ship. As one of the largest ships sailing the Danube, or any European river really, AmaMagna is home to some of the most public venues on any river ship. More active cruisers will appreciate the ship's fitness facilities. All the way aft, there's a gym open 24 hours a day. You can work up a sweat with cardio machines, free weights, and the like. Besides self-led workout routines, the onboard wellness host led several group fitness classes, spin classes, and yoga sessions. AmaMagna also has a spa. There you can be pampered with upcharge services like massages, manicures, and pedicures. There's also a full-service hair salon. We enjoyed one warm afternoon on the outdoor decks during our sail back to Budapest, but during the warmer months, there are various loungers, tables, and chairs, as well as sofas on the sun deck. There's also a pool and a hot tub, which our last river ship did not feature. While it was cold during our February sailing, the pool is heated, and honestly, the water was surprisingly warm, so some cruisers did make use of the space. Oh, and given the size of the ship, we can't overlook the full-size pickleball court. While vacant most of our cruise, we suspect this is a popular place to be on those warm scenic sailing days of the summer. Although, what AmaMagna was really missing is daily programming. It seemed like the focus was on wellness offerings instead of enrichment. The 7-day itinerary had several mornings of scenic cruising, with mostly afternoons ashore, so we definitely think this is a missed opportunity. One morning, a culinary team member demonstrated how to make apple strudel. Another late afternoon, one of the musicians led an arts and crafts activity, but there wasn't much related to any of the ports of call or the region beyond the culinary offering. There were a couple of port talks, but they mostly just discussed the upcoming shore excursions. We would have appreciated some informal talks on the history of the region, or the castles and places, or even just something about the sound of music and some of its filming locations, as there was an optional tour to go to Salzburg. These edutainment type activities were a glaring omission in our opinion. Further, while the ship has 2 onboard libraries, the books here were a hodgepodge of random topics. Few of the reading materials actually focused on any of the cities or countries we were visiting. There's also a comfy cinema with plush loungers and an oversized television that was never used. At the very least, the cinema could have been playing The Sound of Music on a continuous loop or other movies and documentaries related to the itinerary. Again, these spaces felt underutilized and a big missed opportunity. Not surprisingly, however, like most river cruises, there wasn't much variety on AmaMagna in the evenings. The lounge on Deck 3 was the main bar and entertainment space. While it was technically open most of the day, the venue did not liven up until around 6 p.m. with the line's Sip and Sail cocktail hour. The nightly social event was where the cruise manager, Martina, shined. Her energetic personality was perfect for this pre-dinner gathering. Having worked for AmaWaterways for nearly a decade, she was well-versed in river cruising. As cruise manager, she made herself available to guests and wanted to ensure everyone made the most of their vacation. On one evening, a local music trio came on board to perform a melody of classical pieces and contemporary hits after dinner. On other nights, the resident duo, Richard and Anna, kept the late night crowd singing and dancing with live music. Again, we would have appreciated more varied nighttime entertainment. We expected more local performances or presentations. It would have been nice to have a nightly game show or a trivia session as well to liven up the crowd. Actually, the more in-depth port talks and group activities hosted by the cruise manager on our previous river cruise were some of the highlights of that trip. AmaWaterways offers guests a seamless and mostly inclusive experience. Pre-cruise, guests can select from a variety of shore excursion options. In fact, all but one of the tours were included, so guests don't have to worry about any upcharged activities. These tours range from routine city walks to nature hikes and bike rides to day-long sojourns to nearby picturesque cities. Unlike our previous river cruise experience, we did like that there were options in most ports rather than just the one included tour. Sometimes there were unique tour offerings, and other times the offerings were divided into activity levels. This particularly appealed to us as we remembered being slightly bored with the slow pace of our previous tours. Instead, guests could choose active tours like hikes and bikes, regular paced walks, or gentle tours, which were either slower paced walking tours or panoramic bus tours. This variety ensured that those with limited mobility were accommodated as well. Along with the ashore programming, most onboard amenities are included in the cruise fare as well. All guests receive free Wi-Fi internet, which offered reliable connections throughout our voyage. In line with our previous experiences, guests can access specialty coffees 24/7 at self-service coffee kiosks. And like many river cruise lines, beer, wine, and soft drinks are included at lunch and dinner. One nice touch is the additional sip and sail cocktail hour. Before dinner, the cruise manager hosts the social gathering where guests can mingle and enjoy some complimentary cocktails. The limited menu includes several house wines, beer, and a small selection of cocktails. Luckily, Heidi's go-to Cosmopolitan was on the menu each night. Further, all meals are included, with breakfast, lunch, and dinner available at more than just one main dining room, and there's even late night snacks. One advantage of the ship's larger size is the ability to offer alternative dining options. Still, most other ships in AmaWaterways fleet do offer at least a chef's table in addition to the main dining room. Complimentary self-service laundry, a focused wellness program that even included spin bikes, and a pool on the sun deck were just some of the additional inclusions we weren't expecting on our first AmaWaterways river cruise. Perhaps the biggest surprise for us during this river cruise was the dining. With 4 different dining options, guests can choose their experience. If you're like us and want to try them all, you'll need to make reservations once you board the ship for the alternative dining venues. However, reservations are not needed for the main dining room as there is open seating during all meals. The main dining room on AmaMagna is the restaurant. Unlike typical river cruise dining rooms, where communal dining is the only option, the restaurant boasts several different sized tables and booths. So some nights we dined with a larger group, while other times we ate on our own. We liked this flexibility because, let's face it, sometimes you just don't feel like being social at a meal. The restaurant typically offered breakfast around 7 or 7:30 in the morning. It boasted a made-to-order menu of breakfast specialties, like custom omelets and eggs Benedict. There are also daily specials, like a toasty and spicy breakfast burrito. In addition, there was a small buffet with breakfast pastries, European breakfast, fresh fruit, and a few warm selections that guests could serve themselves. At lunch, typically served around noon, the menu featured always available options, like hamburgers or pizza. Honestly though, these menu options were not necessarily our favorites. But we didn't come to Central Europe for your typical cruise fare. Happily, there were daily regional specialties, like Kisla Spätzle, or pork belly with sauerkraut, plus international cuisine like tandoori chicken and Thai shrimp curry. Another nice touch at lunch is that everyone is treated to all of the day's starters presented on a sharing board. Of course, you can also order a soup or salad in addition to these small plates. Dinner at the restaurant on AmaMagna usually started around 7 p.m. after the sip and sail cocktail hour. The dinner menu features several appetizers, a daily soup, entrees, and dessert each evening. In addition to the always included selections, there were vegetarian recommendations each night. This was perfect for Heidi. However, the accommodating chefs were also willing to customize some dishes, like swapping beef tenderloin for chicken one night on a poke bowl. The dinner menus also featured a couple of dishes each evening with local ingredients. For instance, there was a pork schnitzel that paired perfectly with that evening's hand-selected wines when docked overnight in Vienna. Other hearty and rich offerings like slow-braised black Angus short ribs or tender and sweet rack of lamb were just few of the delectable dishes we enjoyed throughout the cruise. While the main dining room offers a traditional rotating 3-course menu, guests can enjoy the exact same fare in a family-style setting at Jimmy's restaurant. This alternative dining space is open only for dinner. Located on Piano Deck, Deck 1, named after co-founder Jimmy Murphy, this restaurant has a laid-back, communal feel with nods to his Irish heritage. We liked the setup and concept, but didn't like that Jimmy served the same menu as the main dining room. We feel the restaurant should have a distinct menu of its own, perhaps featuring Irish fare. Across the way from Jimmy's restaurant is the Chef's Table. This venue offers a 7-course dining menu that stays the same throughout the voyage. These included a goat cheese and tomato sphere, spinach raviolini, coconut lemongrass soup, grilled pike, sorbet, slow-roasted beef tenderloin, and a chocolate sphere for dessert. With a display kitchen in the restaurant's corner, this smaller, sophisticated dining room is a nice change of pace. Finally, all the way forward on Deck 2 is the Fresco restaurant. This venue is open for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and late-night snacks, offering a more casual atmosphere. In the morning, Fresco has a small buffet along with the restaurant's made-to-order menu. Open longer hours than the main dining room, it was a bright and airy place for us to start most of our days on the ship. For lunch, the Fresco restaurant offers the main dining room's always included options and a condensed version of the restaurant's daily specials. It typically featured a sandwich of the day, like the Austrian Alpine wrap, an entree, a salad, and one dessert. At dinner, the Fresco restaurant turned into its own unique setting. To our surprise, it had a completely different set menu throughout the cruise. The only 2 entree selections were a herb-crusted beef strip loin or a tomato ricotta tart. So, Heidi actually asked for the chicken dish from the main dining room that night instead. Of course, the waiter was happy to oblige. While we liked this venue for breakfast and lunch, it was our least favorite dining option for dinner. We think it would be great if the cruise line made this a more casual grab-and-go dining option for dinner. They could serve select dishes from that evening's main dining room or other quick-serve dishes in a self-service style. This way, guests would not have to sit through a multi-course meal after a long day ashore if they didn't want to, especially since room service is not an option. But overall, the food on our AmaWaterways River Cruise exceeded our expectations. Our cozy outside balcony, cabin 229, was on the starboard side of the cello deck, which is deck 2. This category A-B stateroom measured 252 square feet and was akin to your typical balcony stateroom on an ocean ship. Immediately upon entering the room, the bathroom was to the left and the closet was to the right. Further into the room was a small desk tucked around the corner behind the bathroom. Then was the bed on the forward wall facing aft, adjacent to the balcony. While the rest of AmaMagna felt open and spacious, we would have appreciated additional space in our cabin. There was limited storage beyond the closet, and the walls weren't magnetic, so we couldn't use our tried and true cabin hacks for additional storage. Thus, it took some creative unpacking to fit all our gear for this week-long cruise. Plus, the only full-length mirror was on the back of the closet door, completely blocking the main walkway when in use. However, we did appreciate the USB outlets on each side of the bed. Along with the cubby-style nightstands, I was able to keep our devices charged and pack away some of our accessories. Perhaps what we missed the most was a seating area. Besides a desk, there was no sofa or even a bedside chair. Several days I ended up taking a balcony chair inside so we could both have a place to sit and do some work. Surprisingly, the bathroom was relatively large, with a full-sized tiled shower and a standard vanity. Compared to our previous river cruise stateroom, the bathroom definitely offered more space, which made getting ready for each day's adventures easier. Finally, the balcony was the length of the stateroom and just deep enough for our 2 chairs and table. Even though the weather was cool, gray, and overcast on several days, we did spend some time on our balcony. Whether it was scenic sailing or afternoons doing a little work, we enjoyed having this personal outdoor space. While the interior size of our room was similar to that of Category E and D staterooms on the piano deck, think ocean view but just on a river ship, we believe upgrading to this category stateroom is worth gaining the additional outdoor space. However, if we were to sail on this class of ship in the future, we would probably book one of the entry-level suites, which are almost 50% bigger. They feature a split bathroom design, more storage, and a separate seating area. The 7-day Best of the Danube itinerary is perfect for those looking to test the waters with a river cruise. With many river cruises lasting 10 to 14 days, this week-long sailing is the ideal introduction to this type of cruise. This itinerary features 3 countries, which were all new for us, and several popular spots along this famous river. Thus, it provides plenty of opportunity to explore the region's hallmark cities at a comfortable pace. Starting and ending in Budapest, Hungary, we also cruise to Bratislava, Slovakia, and Vienna, Austria. With Budapest being our starting and ending point for the sailing, spending multiple days here is fitting, as the city has 2 distinct areas, the Pest side and the Buda side. Thus, we were able to dedicate a day to each. Even if you arrive on embarkation day, the cruise line allows guests to drop off luggage at the ship as early as 9:30 a.m. With embarkation not starting until later in the afternoon and an all aboard of 6:30 p.m., the first day is ripe for self-exploration. With our pre-cruise hotel stay, we were up and ready to explore independently. We stayed at the Airy Hotel, which was ideally located within walking distance of several landmarks on the Pest side. So we spent close to 3 hours strolling the streets, taking in sights like St. Stephen's Basilica, the Parliament Building, the Shoes on the Danube Memorial, Liberty Square, and the ruined bars. On the back end, we took the included Buda walking tour. After a quick ride over to the other side of the Danube, we had 3 hours to explore the city's original center. We strolled this fortified area with the tour guide providing commentary along the way. After admiring the castle building, the Hungarian White House, Mattis Church, and Fisherman's Bastion, we had just enough free time for a little shopping and, of course, a chimney cake. On day 2, the ship pulled into the quaint capital city of Bratislava, Slovakia. We didn't have far to walk, seeing the historic Old Town, as our ship was docked just a few blocks away. With our quiet fox in tow, we joined the group for our Coronation City walking tour. Showcasing the city's unique history over several centuries, our guide detailed her personal experiences living under Soviet regime before the liberation of the small country. With remnants of Soviet rule scattered throughout the city, the cobblestone streets led the way to churches and landmarks hundreds of years old. From the preserved Michael's Gate, or parts of the original wall abutting a highway, the city is a charming mix of old and new. Weaving in and out of the streets are other notable photo ops, including palaces, cathedrals, as well as statues carved into the street. But perhaps the most iconic city landmark is the impressive Bratislava Castle overlooking the city. While several of our fellow cruisers made the trek to the top, we enjoyed some coffee and souvenir shopping following the guided tour. Luckily, we were treated to nighttime castle vistas as we sailed on to our next port of call. One of the draws of river cruising is that land is never out of sight. But not just any land. River cruises often appeal to those looking to sail by ancient villages, rolling valleys, and majestic castles. While we were let down by many of the vistas on our Sin River cruise, we were ready for the Danube to wow us. Unfortunately, Mother Nature did not want to cooperate. With dense fog and a cloudy, wet morning, our scenic cruising through the Wachu Valley did not deliver precisely the views we had hoped. However, we learned the night before that our afternoon tour to the Melk Abbey was getting upgraded. Now, along with a tour of this UNESCO World Heritage Site, we would also visit the river village of Dürnstein. One of the benefits of cruising off-season is that there were fewer crowds and virtually no traffic. So the cruise line was able to modify the itinerary to add some additional time at this nearby town. So we set off on a short bus ride from our docking point to this small town known for its vineyards. Again, the weather did not fully cooperate, but we did enjoy our guided stroll in town before taking the 30-minute drive to the magnificent 18th century Abbey. Known for its Baroque architecture, Melk Abbey is home to many impressive religious artifacts dating back centuries. Intricately designed rooms dive deeper into the religious underpinnings of the Abbey and its monks. We quickly visited its famous library, which has manuscripts dating back over 700 years. The tour culminates with a stop in the church, which contains over 4 kilograms of gold-leafed statues. If you are a subscriber to this channel, then the one thing you definitely know is that Heidi and I are often over-planners. But given our travels, we had less time than usual to prepare for this trip. Thus, when docking in Linz, we were unsure what to do. With the cruise line offering 3 distinct options, pre-cruise, we selected the full-day tour to Salzburg, Austria, the birthplace of Mozart. However, we would later learn that Salzburg is also home to the Von Trapp family, the inspiration for the beloved musical The Sound of Music. So, our guided walking tour includes stops at locations featured in the film, as well as stops related to Mozart's life. Starting at the Mirabell Palace, we had time for some quick photo ops in the gardens, but given the time of year, they were not yet in bloom. From there, we were only a few blocks away from one of Mozart's residences. Along the way, the 17th and 18th century architecture seamlessly blended with modern structures. Trying to keep up with our guide, while also admiring the cityscapes, historic buildings, and statues, felt a bit overwhelming. Crossing a pedestrian bridge, it was on to Gitteidagrasse, a popular shopping district. Of course, during our free time, Heidi and I found our way to one of the Christmas stores to ensure we took home an ornament. This well-traveled road is also home to one of the most popular tourist spots, Mozart's birthplace. Once an unknown location, the 3rd floor of this rather ordinary apartment is now a museum. Walking by a few other well-known landmarks, we then had close to 3 hours of free time to explore on our own. So, along with acquiring our requisite souvenirs, we took the funicular up to the 17th century fortress, which gives you a bird's eye view of the city. On a clear day, the Alps would also be visible. There are also several museum exhibits, restaurants, and stores here. In fact, you could spend the whole day exploring this fortress city. As part of the adventure, we stopped by Cafe Tomaselli for a coffee and pastry, just like Mozart, one of their most famous patrons. While we were not as prepared as usual for a full day of sightseeing, we still accomplished quite a bit with only minimal disagreements. Since leaving Melk, AmaMagna had actually begun its return trip east. After a morning of scenic cruising, we arrived in the romantic city of Vienna. Following a typical morning on board, we geared up for an entire afternoon and evening in this avant-garde capital city. Our included tour of the day was the Imperial Vienna City Tour and carriage ride. Departing after lunch, there was a 30-minute bus ride from the ship to the heart of the city. This panoramic tour almost gave us whiplash, as the guide pointed out sights, one after another, appearing on both sides of the bus, from the opera house to historic hotels, churches, museums, and squares. The bus eventually dropped us off at Rathausplatz. Exiting the coach, we were surrounded by impressive reconstructed 18th century buildings. With seemingly every building along our tour being noteworthy, or at least picture-worthy, it was tough keeping up. But we soon reached a point near the Hofburg Palace for our carriage ride. Again, the weather remained cloudy and drizzly, so our carriage had the roof on it. Thus, we didn't see much of what we were passing, and there wasn't any narration during the 30-minute ride. From there, we snapped a few photos of the front of the palace before heading to our next destination, the urban center. Unlike other sections of Vienna, the stroll down this modern street felt like we were in the middle of New York City with luxury shops and several restaurants. Our tour ended outside of St. Stephen's Cathedral. This medieval church feels almost out of place, nestled in the middle of tourist traps and skyscrapers. With just about 40 minutes of free time, we barely had enough time to accomplish anything before getting bussed back to the ship. Once back on board, it was a mad dash to change and prepare for our evening jaunt back into the city. Initially, we had booked the upcharge concert experience offered by the cruise line, but we ended up switching to a different classical concert suggested by a friend. With the concert at 8 p.m., we had to be ready for an early dinner. Luckily, the restaurant offered an additional early seating to accommodate guests heading off on the cruise-sponsored tour. So we grabbed a table of 6, scarfed down some schnitzel, and had an Uber waiting to take us to St. Anne's Church. The 75-minute performance included a 4-piece string ensemble that featured works by Mozart, Schubert, and Strauss. Having very little knowledge of classical music, each piece was a new introduction to the works of these musical masterminds. With our first day in Vienna spent admiring the main highlights of the city, on our second day, we joined the tour groups for the included tour of the Schönbrunn Palace. Located about 35 minutes from our ship, the summer residence of the Habsburg dynasty is one of the most popular destinations to visit in Austria. Walking through the palace gates, a massive square reveals the palace constructed by Maria Theresa, the only female ruler under the Habsburg family. Similar to our experience at Versailles in France, all tour groups took the same route through the second-floor living quarters of this palace. Passing through grand halls and galleries, our guide intertwined the rise and fall of this ruling family over hundreds of years. Being one of the first tours of the morning, and off-season, the palace was not overrun by tourists. Following the tour of the main building, we were given about 40 minutes to explore the gardens on our own. Again, had this been spring or summer, with flowers in bloom, this wouldn't have been nearly enough time. As it was, this time around, we didn't have enough time to get up to the hill to the Glorietta. Luckily, the gardens are open for anyone to explore, so if the timing is right, we will probably return to the palace to stroll the gardens on a future visit to Vienna. Our first AmaWaterways River cruise was filled with exquisite dining, picturesque cities, and fond memories. AmaMagna was the perfect introduction to this river cruise line, and it was much different than our experience sailing on Viking river cruises. You might be asking yourself, how different is Viking river cruises from our experience on AmaWaterways? Well, lucky for you, right here on YouTube, we have our exclusive and detailed look at what it's really like sailing on a Viking river cruise. In that video, we break down all the details, from the onboard experience, the inclusions, the dining, tours and shore excursions, and more to help you decide if a Viking river cruise is right for your next cruise vacation.